to our collective credit, and we all work together.
If I remember correctly, I think only 3 of us voted to support the lowest responsible bidder to close the landfill.
Well, no, there was a consensus, Kevin. There was unanimous consensus all along, and I've been working on it, and Dwight and you and Roger and Liz, all of us, all year, on the landfill, as you know. And, if, you know, not to get into too much details, but with respect to the particular vote, that night, it was rushed. It was put on the agenda. We didn't get a chance. The engineer hadn't even vetted all the bidders. You know, it was just another rush.
No, that's not true.
So there it was.
The,
Yes,
the
it's true.
engineer had not only vetted all the bidders, had sent it in an email, the approval, and also a letter, which I hadn't gotten because the email was misdirected. But that being said, I just want to, you know, let's get this back down to some nuts and bolts here as far as sand being thrown in. There are lots of things being thrown around, sand and knives. What I want to say is what I would like to have is Supervisor Wrights provide in preparation for the RFPs. What I would like to have is a list of all of the engineers that are employed by the town. In that list would be whether that specific engineer was selected by an RFP, when, how long of a contract, how much of the monies that are spent by the town are paid directly by the town for the services of that engineer, and how much of the monies collected by the engineer have been given by applicants. I think that's important because, once again, we need to have some facts and figures in order to evaluate what we're doing here. And I'm hearing that there are lots and lots of engineers, and I just need to know, and it's not really all the monies that the applicants don't pay. I'd like to have a clear delineation because it's very important to me that we know precisely what it is that we're speaking about. And since Supervisor, you're here, you are the budget officer, has been stated over and over again now. If you can just get that together, I think that would be important in our consideration. Because once again, it's important to me that we have quality services at the best value, at the best price. And also, as far as continuity of someone like Nate Jacobson, that has to also be taken into consideration. So that's what I would like to see, and if that could be presented to us by the time we have an RFP out there, it would be extremely helpful, and we wouldn't be making a decision regarding important things like engineers in a vacuum of knowledge.
Okay,
which
Ms.
sometimes
Hudak,
happens.
on July 27th, I had given you a document as well as the rest of the town board members because there was a New York State audit conducted here in the town of Southeast. And I gave you a spreadsheet which showed the audit period from January 1 of 2009 to May 10 of this year. And Sterling Environmental, Chazen Engineering, Nate Jacobson, Malcolm Perney, and Marchetti Engineers, those 6 engineering firms totaled during the audit period $892,000. Okay? So that was a document that I had given to you. So if you're looking for facts and figures, those are some of the facts and figures. In addition, that evening, I had given you a fact and figure spreadsheet about the legal services that we had spent during that audit period also. And that was back in July. And I was looking for some feedback from yourself, Mr. Cullen, and Mr. Gross, as to how we were going to address the audit period, as well as the amount of money we spent on legal fees during that period, which was $340,000. So that's something that this town board should consider. That's something that was just during an audit period. That was a spreadsheet that I had given you to review. And I say over and over again, that's our number one responsibility here, all right? It's not who our political friends are, who we take contributions from. It's about our responsibility to the community to look at simply a New York State audit during a 14-month period as to spending $340,000 for legal services. Where can we cut back on that? Should we be putting that out for an RFP? Those things are my concern, and that should be the other concern of the other board members, not finding out, oh, who is the budget officer, all right?
No,
We're not here to play games anymore. This is serious business throughout the community.
And
And with respect to the, I mean, that's not even including the, you know, the landfill for which the town board was castigated. And I had voted against it, and Dwight did too, and you weren't on the town board, and neither was Bob, but we were castigated for placing a contract by a New York State Supreme Court justice for placing a garbage contract with a vendor, with an $857,000 higher vendor, with alleged mob ties. I mean, that's simply outrageous, and there we are. As a community, that's what we were saddled with. And we have disruptive elements in the audience tonight who favored that. So there we are. I'll continue to resist it. Councilman Yee, I'm sure will continue to resist it, and I would like to see us as a unanimous front to condemn such practices going forward.
And continue to resist things like that also. That's important to us.
I once
And
again-
we have, like the supervisor said, we're members in the audience who rant and cheer that that was a good decision, and that was not a good decision. As a member of the town board and as someone who's responsible for the dollars in this community, that was not a responsible decision.
And once again, I just need to know, and I acknowledge receipt of what was prepared by, or what was given to me by Councilmember Yee, but it does not say how much of the fees paid by the engineer, to the engineers was paid by the applicants, nor does it state, the breakout, state exactly what we're speaking about as far as the payment of the legal services and for what those services were paid for, including but not limited to whether they went for what pieces of litigation. There's ongoing litigation that the town is involved in. As a matter of fact, that Supervisor Wrights was deposed. It's a depositions because of these legal fees, and that's hours and hours of work. So I don't know if the town board would be interested in parsing out the various contracts to different attorneys for doing this and have an attorney for each and every lawsuit that we're involved in, but certainly that's something that can be discussed. What I know now is what was given to me by Councilmember Yee did not have that breakout. So I'm going to ask again that we receive materials that break out each and every fee or the amounts that were charged by the various engineers that were paid for by the applicants, so that we can have this information in front of us, and perhaps we can even move forward to see what else we can do to make certain that the applicants shoulder the lion's share, if not all of these fees. But that being said, I would still like the information.
With that being said, when I gave you the breakdown, I did break down filing fees, legal research, appellate filing fees, appellate printing, travel, photocopies, Matthew Bender updates, outside reproductions, Federal Express, lodging, travel, parking, conference fees, publication, meal allowance, long-distance phone calls, filing fees, which gives me a grand total. So I did break those down. If you want to continue to just see and
Go ahead.
continue to micromanage how much, where we're breaking down, the bottom line is the bottom line. We're spending too much money. Okay, I'll break it down for you. If we're spending $2,400 on photocopies, if we're spending $2,000 in travel arrangements for the town attorney, that needs to be looked at. I broke it down for you. Okay?
Well, a lot of that-
As far as, how much of this you want to break down, I am looking at over $1 million in engineering services over the course of 14 months. Now, if you add it up, for a 2-year period, you're talking millions of dollars, Mr. Hudak. So let's try to be more responsible and look at the bottom dollar, okay?
And once again, I just need to know how much was from the applicants, and a lot of what
Okay, but
Councilmember Yee
I heard
just
you
said.
earlier ask
A lot of what,
for that information. With all respect,
why do
during
I
the past
get,
2 years,
why do I get interrupted all
I
the
have
time?
done, because you're making the same point for the fourth time, Liz.
I think
over the
everyone's
past
going to
2
hear
years-
hysterical next.
Over the past 2 years, I've done my homework, Councilman Yee, Councilman Gross have done our homework, and you're invited to do your homework. Now, we will all have a complete set of information after, as I'm in the process right now, pulling together the budget for 2011, and we'll discuss this in further detail for the future work sessions.
Absolutely. And I have also broken down, and Mr. Gross remembers, the computer services that we have done, and broke it down by month. So yes, I've done my homework. I'm asking you also to do your homework. This information, you can just go to the accounting office. He can give you the documents. You can add them up, put them on a spreadsheet like I did, and see where we can make some savings.
Well, as long as the supervisor is doing his homework and his budget, then this should be really at his fingertips. It should be
What's
something-
upsetting me most, though,
Well,
is
why
that
do
we
I
just
get
seem to
interrupted?
be
Councilmember
arguing
Yee, I am
over
not
how
going
to
to be
spend-
interrupted.
Okay.
I still want the same information. It's very fundamental. It's very simple, period.
Okay,
That's what I
Councilwoman.
want.
And-
That's the 6th time, and thank you for that inquiry.
And if I could just speak for a second, since you brought up the garbage, Councilman Hudak and myself were not on the board when the vote was taken, but if I remember correctly from being in the audience, you and Dwight wanted to continue the contract for a year with AWS for 2010, which would cost us more now than we're paying.
Wrong.
And if we did that, we would now be having SaniPro as our contractor, because the U.S. Marshals sold AWS's New York routes to SanaPro, even though they have alleged mob ties. So we would have SanaPro picking up our garbage as we do now, and we'd be paying more for it. We'd be paying the same rate as we did in 2009, because you guys wanted to go and renew the contract for 1 year with AWS at a higher rate than we're paying now.
Well, Councilman,
And that's the truth.
the bottom line is, we had voted, and I had made a motion for, introduced a resolution to take the lowest responsible bidder's bid, and that resolution was defeated by the preceding town board, 3-2. Immediately after that resolution was defeated, which would have saved the town $857,000, and a resolution was introduced by a past councilman for to accept the bid by a higher bidder. That resolution passed 3-2, and the town instantly contracted to make an $857,000 overpayment. The lowest responsible bidder litigated, and the court ruled in favor of the lowest responsible bidder, which, on the basis of the court order, would have saved the town of Southeast that same $857,000. And this board, in December 2009, in a surprise last-minute move by your predecessor and Liz's, and joined by Councilman Gross, voted to appeal that towards the goal of overturning that $857,000 savings and reinstating the $857,000 overpayment to a vendor who was alleged by a sitting New York State Supreme Court justice to have alleged mob ties.
Who now has
that is
the
the
roots.
record, and those are the facts.
Who was sold the routes by the U.S. Marshal. So I think that whole mob tie thing, I think is...
And let's finish the story.
argument.
What happened was that appeal was not continued by the town. In fact, the appeal was by the SanaPro people, the successful bidders. Judge O'Rourke was reversed 4-0 by the appellate justices in Brooklyn. So that decision was unanimously reversed, and there were costs assessed against AAA, who was defeated in that decision. So that's the complete story. So what that means is, up to this point, the decision by Justice O'Rourke was unanimously reversed. We now have SanaPro, who has now taken AWS over, and we have their services. And at this point, we are assured of a stable contract for another 2 years in periods of time where lots of costs are increasing. If this town had gone along with the highest bidder, which was AWS, as was initially recommended by Councilmember Yee and Supervisor Wrights,
No,
we
it
would have been
wasn't.
in a very difficult situation, because then at that point what would have happened is now we would have been with SanaPro anyway, at the risk of now at the end of this year having to rebid the garbage contract. If we had gone and Justice O'Rourke's decision was not unanimously reversed by 4 Supreme Court justices in Brooklyn, then we would have ended up with AAA. And there is I read somewhere where AAA had some involvement in the transfer station in Peekskill that was closed down. So I
That's
invite
not true,
anyone,
Councilman.
I would invite anyone to review the bid that was submitted by AAA. That's very important that you see that, because amongst other things, the bid had in its form what machinery or equipment you have, and the response, as I recall, was, if we get the contract, we'll buy the machinery and the equipment. That was AAA, what they had said. So,
That's
so
standard in
what
the
I do
industry.
know, I have the other bids, and I read all 3. The other bids did not say that. They outlined the machinery and the equipment that they had, and they also submitted financial disclosure, which I do not believe was submitted by AAA. In any
Okay,
event,
we have-
it's always. I'm not done yet.
Okay.
In any event,
Please continue.
what's,
Just bow
what's
down
very,
then,
what's
Sarah.
very, what's very important that we all understand is we have a successful bidder. It's that bidder has been sustained. We're moving forward. And unfortunately, each and every, it's almost every meeting that we have to go through this litany again. But, at this point in time, I for one, would like to move on. I get the